Welcome back to the County Agent Podcast. So this week's guest is Rhyan Marshall, a former Barber County 4-H member and current student at Kansas State University that just finished up a study abroad program at K-State. And this is not the first one, right?
No, they do these through across the college wagon between the departments every year.
Yeah. And we had originally planned on having Rhyan at the Barber County Cattlemen Association annual meeting to talk about this, but turns out we didn't plan very well, and you were actually on the trip during that time. So this is why we're here today, is to talk about your trip to Argentina. So I think the first thing I'd like to know is this your first trip out of the country to study abroad? And if not, let's start with where the first trip was.
Yeah. Yep. So this is actually my first time out of the country, especially for something that was agriculture focused. So it was a whole new thing for me.
Nice. And how long was you in Argentina?
We were there for 10 days. So we left the 13th and we returned the 21st of March.
What all did the trip entail?
Yep. So there's a group of 18 of us that were in the animal science department and 3 advisors. We flew out and we got to do some of the fun excursion type touristy stuff. Then they took us to a couple local operations where we got to actually meet those people in Argentina that are running those operations firsthand and kind of see a little bit of the differences and the similarities between what we're doing here versus what they're doing.
Did you get to participate, like hands-on stuff like processing cattle or anything like that?
Yeah, there wasn't any that type of stuff where we got to do super hands-on. It was more so just kind of seeing the lay of the land of their operations. We did get to see the actual cattle at a couple, and then we also went to a livestock market. It's actually one of the largest in South America, and we got to be there the day of an auction.
So walk us through, is there any differences, or is it fairly similar style cattle that what you grew up on a cattle ranch?
I did, yep.
You know, I think we need to make that clear. So was there a lot of similarities to the cattle that you've seen here in the States versus there, or was there some differences?
I will be completely honest. When I first thought about it, I didn't really know what to expect. I think I had an idea in my head of what I was expecting to see, especially when we went to the livestock market. I think in my head, it was maybe I was expecting a little bit on the lower end, but that was not the case. I was very shocked. We went in and we saw cattle that were on the upper end, and then we went to an Angus operation towards the end of it, and it was very, very high quality cattle. And they talked us through their selection process and whatnot, and it was really cool to see that there were so many things that I grew up knowing and understanding on operations around here that they're doing the same things there, whether it looks exactly the same or not. I think it was very clear that there's a lot of things in this industry. We have the same goal. It's just a matter of how we get there. So I was a little shocked. I didn't know what to expect, but there was a lot of cattle on the higher end that I was excited to see.
Was you thinking you was going to see a lot of cattle with humps and long ears?
I was expecting a little bit more of that influence. Yeah, but I felt right at home. We were on a Red Angus operation. They actually run, it was cool to see. I come from a Red Angus operation, but they run Angus all the same. So their reds and blacks are all Angus. So we walked in, they're saying Angus operation. I'm like, all right, we're going to see all black cattle. We walk in, it's predominantly red. And I'm like, heck yeah, love this. But it was cool to see that they actually run, it's all the same to them. So red and black are all Angus to them. And they were predominantly Red Angus on that operation.
So what kind of breeding strategies do they have? Are they using embryo transfer?
Yep, they all the same technology. There was a lot that they were the same. They talked us through, I'll use the one, for example, Cattlemen is where we went. And they talked us through, they're doing a lot of work with select sires here in the States and doing things like that with their semen sales and everything. But they're the same way. They have embryo transfer. They're working their AI. They use cleanup bulls. A lot of the same things that we see here in the States.
So when you talk about them using select sires, are they using semen from bulls from the States, or are they selling?
They're selling theirs. Yep. So they told us they're dropping about 220 was their average, their bull crop each year. So they're
220 head.
Yep. And out of that, they retain 1 to 5. So as you can imagine, their selection process is insane. So they talked us through that a little bit. And the kid actually that's managing that, he's 22 years old, and he's the first kid out of the family that they hired in. And he's the first one. He's only been there for 4 months, but knows all 80 of their bulls in their program right now, like the back of his hand. and has
So
learned.
he's not from the family.
No, he's the first one in the
First
family
one.
that they've hired. Yep.
Okay.
They have 10 employees and 4 in management, and they are rotating cattle on different pastures every day. They have sets that they weigh every 20 days. And it was cool to see that their labor, like no matter how many, employees or what they had feet on the ground, they were doing that. In their land showed it, their cattle showed it, everything showed it in that operation that they every single day. That's what they do.
So are they utilizing like a lot of poly wire, like the hot wire to rotate? Or are they setting temporary fences up, or is this permanent stuff that they're rotating cattle
a lot
through?
we didn't see a lot of it, but I mean a lot of it was pretty similar to what we see here. They don't, I will say, we talked a lot, their fencing is a little bit different, because we talked about how we see all of our T-posts and everything here. They don't really use those, and we talked when we're burning, we said burning, and they were like, what are you talking about? And we were talking about all of our permanent fencing that stays up around here. And they told us, you try that in Argentina and you go to jail. So they actually spray everything. So their management looks a little bit different in terms of the ground, but
yeah. So what kind of cow numbers are they running?
I don't exactly remember how many they were at, but like I said, we talked
more
on
than 220.
Yeah. We talked more on their bull side of things. We talked about numbers, but we actually did get to go out and see all of their main cow herd that was out there, and they told us that every single time they have one that comes up open, she's out. They don't give her a second chance. They don't turn them around. They don't try to get them on the next one. They're out. So they're very productive in terms of what they keep in their herd, and it showed it in their cows. They had them all in their same age. They are different ages, but same group. And they were ranging, 10 years apart. And even on their older end, those cows were, they were holding up well. And so it was really cool to see. And those calves on the ground that were standing right next to them, it was obvious that the strategies they're using, it's working for them.
So you were there just a couple weeks ago, and
a week from today, we landed back in the States.
Okay. So what does it look like in Argentina right now versus what you're seeing in Barber County?
It's a lot greener. It's a lot greener. But no, I made a social media post actually last week, and one thing that I had said in it was I was halfway across the world, but I felt right at home. And that was because there were so many similarities. We have this big idea of what it looks like where you travel. And when we were in the city, obviously it was very new to me. I hadn't had a neighbor till I went to college. So that part of it was new to me. But once we got out of the city and we were going to these operations, they take care of their land the same way we do. They care about their land the same way we do. This cattle industry is their life the same way it is for a lot of us around here. So there was obviously differences in little things, but that was something that stuck out to me, that I was that far away from home, but it felt like home there because there were so many things that were similar in terms of what they do and how they do it.
Now, did they get into like carcass value or carcass merit on those?
They didn't. That wasn't something we really talked about. I don't really know what that looks like for them there, or how much they, what kind of standard they hold that to, but that wasn't something.
So this ranch basically is a seed stock operation.
Yep,
their whole goal is to sell the bulls. Mm-hmm. Okay. Did
they do sell some females. We got to see their bred heifers that were ready to auction. Pretty cool.
Did you see like any large scale confinement feeding, anything like that? Feedlots, grow yards?
We saw a couple, but their feedlot system, that was something that I was actually kind of nerding out a little bit. We were talking about their feedlots, and here in the States, we're seeing a lot of beef on dairy. There's a huge dairy influence. And so we were asking them, like what does this look like? And it's non-existent. They don't have beef on dairy there. It's not a thing. It's not a thought to them right now. And their feedlots actually look very different. Their larger feedlots are very much on the high end and very much on the larger end. But their smaller ones, a lot of theirs are inside other operations is what they told us. So a lot of times it'll be a cow-calf operation, but they have a small feedlot on the side or something like that, where they're kind of built into their already existing operations. But there was a couple standalone feedlots that we got to see, but even that, same thing, dry lot after dry lot, and looked pretty similar. So
probably not as much corporately owned.
Yeah, no, not as common as what we see here. Yeah.
Okay. So did you go to any other ranches besides that one
Yeah,
while
we
he's down
went
there?
to one other. It was La Trinidad, so we got to same thing, talk to them a little bit. We didn't really get to see as much in terms of like their actual cattle operation and whatnot there, but we got to hear a lot about theirs. Theirs was more of a family-owned focus type thing, so got to hear a little bit about that. And then, like I said, we went to the agro livestock market, so that was actually really cool to see. It's one of the largest in South America, and it actually sets the cattle prices for the rest of Argentina. So there's
Well, walk us through what does that look like compared to, a sale,
yeah.
a facility around here.
Yeah, that was one of those things that I had this idea in my head of what I thought it was going to look like, and we pulled in, and their Angus association is actually sitting in the building right next to it when you pull in. So it's cool to see that. And then you go up, and they took us through and got to see everything. Well, all of a sudden, this auction just starts when we're standing right there, and we were like, "What is going on?" And there's just a guy with a megaphone, and I was like, they're all walking around in like sandals and loafers, and they have a megaphone, and I was like, I'm lost. Like, what's going on here? And they told us a little bit about it, that actually this livestock market is privately owned, but has 44 auctioneer companies within the market itself. And each auction company is responsible for their own auctioneer. They come in. That's how you know who the auctioneer is. It's the guy with the megaphone. They come in and they sell everything by the pin. So they average weigh the pins and sell everything by the pin. So they actually can work through up to 10,000 head a day through that market. And they're selling about 3 times a week.
Wow. So you're not seeing the little odds and ends
No,
here and there.
yeah. And that was one of those things, like I said, I didn't know what to expect to see in their sale barn, or, what that was going to look like. But it really, it was just pin after pin, and they're standing there. He's working up top. It took him about 30 seconds to sell each lot, and he was moving.
So is it like they got a little catwalk
Yep.
and
Everyone just
going
stands
by
on the
pin?
catwalk, and he's in the front. He sells the lot, moves to the next, and everyone just follows him along the catwalk.
Wow.
And they really do. That's how they sell 10,000 a day, but they crank through them pretty quick.
Man, we got some folks around here could take some notes from that. There's some sale barns that you get caught up in the odds and ends, and next thing you know, it's 3 hours later,
Yep.
and it's like, I'm kind of bored.
Yeah, it did not take long.
So when like those cattle that were being sold there, was it a mixture of some that would go on and grow? Was there some that were finished?
So they're actually, the way that they do it is 80% of what they sell goes straight to slaughter, 20% goes to feedlot. So they're kind of the middleman is what they call themselves, but they were predominantly 80% of what they sell is going straight to slaughter. The day that we were there was actually the highest Holstein they had seen in a long time. So we were on one side, and it was all reds and blacks. We walked to the others, and it was all Holstein cattle. And that was our tour guide. His name was Marcos. He's the ag guy for agri tours down there. And he told us, he's like, I've never seen this many Holstein cattle in this place before. But that's what they told us. They were about 80% going to slaughter and 20% going to feedlot.
At the marketplace, did you see, was there any other breeds represented? Was there?
That was pretty much all that we saw.
Just Angus.
It was Angus. And,
wow,
and
that's
Holstein.
pretty impressive.
Yeah.
Huh. So what did the buying situation look like? Was there a lot of people?
Yeah.
Trying to buy?
You could see there was
it's pretty competitive.
Yeah, so we were there a little bit early, got to kind of walk around and see the gauchos moving the cattle. And that was another thing too. They don't ride on a saddle. They got about 6 inches of just padding. They're riding their horses up and down these alleys in loafers, in Tom's loafers. So that was cool to see too. But we got
what's holding the padding on? Just them?
They have a strap on the front, and then they're just sitting on, and it works. It was cool to see, but
they're not going to rope and tie on.
No, they are not. There's some cowboys here though. I don't know if they'd stay on down there. It was cool to see, but so we got to stay up on the catwalk before it started and just kind of walk. And there's people that are just walking by these lots and everything. The auctioneer, they have a bell, is how you know where it starts, and they just sit there and ring the bell until it's time for the auction to start. And then everyone gathers by that pin. The auctioneer starts, and then you just follow them. And you would have about, depending on which one was going at which time and which auctioneer company was selling, you would have 20, 25 people that were on the catwalk following along. So they did tell us that it also depends. Like I said, there's 44 auction companies to go through, so they're responsible for their own auctioneer. So there was people that buy from specific companies, but then there's other people that they show up and they see a pin, and it doesn't really matter which company's selling it, they're buying it.
So 10,000 head a day. What's our definition of a day? Like 8 to 5?
I don't know exactly what they were doing, but they told us, and that's what it was kind of weird because we were on one side and then we walked through a tunnel. We were on the other side and there was another auction starting on the other side. So I don't
Oh,
know if they
there's
just
a lot going on.
there's a lot going on. They had bells on both sides. So I don't know if they run to where multiple companies can sell at a time or if it's
Yeah.
one at a time. I'm not sure, but they were selling, I think they said about 3 times a week.
So rough figures, I mean, anywhere around 30,000 a week going through there.
Yeah.
Year round?
I believe
they
so.
say?
Yeah, I
Wow.
believe so.
Is there any other cattle markets in the country?
It was cool. They told us that was one of the largest in South America, and that market itself sets the cattle prices for the rest of Argentina. So
that's, it's not the same, but it's similar.
yeah.
In the sheep and goat world, that's what's happening down in South Texas at San Angelo. I mean, they're not selling them exactly like that, but that dictates what every other auction around the country is going to be selling at is generally San Angelo.
And we talked too, because, we're seeing there's also a whole other world on the show side here where it's all online sales and everything like that. And they actually told us they have a couple that Cattlemen, that Angus operation, they actually have a couple that they run to a couple different shows and whatnot. So talk to us about that. But that was something too that like online sales, I'm not sure really it's common down there.
Yeah, I didn't think about that. At their marketplace, they probably didn't have Cattle USA set up, running online.
No, it's a megaphone.
Yeah. Wow.
It.
That would be kind of fun to see.
It
They
was
let
cool
you
to see.
video stuff like that?
No, whenever we went in, it was no pictures, no videos. But we got a picture on the catwalk, and then we had to put it away. But
did they have like brand inspectors or anything like that?
That was something that we actually were kind of talking about. Was traceability is, I mean, obviously it's a huge thing in our industry right now. It's something that I think there's so many different angles to it. There's so many different ways to look at it, and there's people on all sides of it. So that was something that we asked about, what does your traceability system look like? And they actually have no mandated traceability system. So EIDs are not required. They did say that a lot of those cattle that come through that market, they do have an EID. But outside of that, it's ear tags. And so we were up top looking, trying to spot brands and see, and there was a couple pins that had pretty small brands up on their hip. And that was it. There was a lot of cattle that were coming through without physical brands at all. But outside of that, it was tags. And then they said the EIDs are not really popular. So we talked about that Cattlemen place where you're selling cattle all over, you're selling semen everywhere. What does this look like for you? And they were the same way. They're starting their investment in the EID technology, getting the readers and everything, but they're the same way right now. They have no EIDs, nothing. So
when I got a couple more questions about the livestock sale. Was there like a universal scale that everything went across, then got pinned, or was these weights determined in the pin themselves?
I'm not sure. I don't know if they did that before and then it depended, but they just told us that when they're selling, it's average weight of the pin. So we didn't get to see a lot of the like bringing them in process. We got to see some of them taking them down the alley, but that was about it. So I don't know if it's when they're untrained, like they're knocked off, if they're weighed right then, and then it kind of depends. I don't know, but they just told us when they're actually selling, it's average weight of.
And I mean, 10,000 head right there the whole time. I mean, everything was there when you was
I
there.
don't remember what they said their capacity was, their full capacity, but that's how they were cranking.
Wow.
On average.
Well, here's the big question. They have a good cafe at the marketplace.
They actually do. They had a really nice,
barn.
Yeah, it was actually pretty nice. It beats a lot of the little sale barn cafes that are around here. It was actually pretty nice. So we got to go in there and they brought us a whole thing of croissants and coffee. So croissants, big thing down there.
Really?
Yeah, we ate a lot of bread. I've never craved a vegetable more than when I got back. I was like, I need a vegetable right now. Because it was bread every single meal. Then we got our main meal and then dessert. They eat dessert with every meal. We went to lunch. They're like, you want a dessert? I'm like, no, it's noon. And they're like, "Oh, pancake." No. But that's how it is.
Huh. I have not studied up on Argentina. I didn't realize croissants were that big of a deal down there.
They gave us a lot of bread.
Huh. Well, was there some other locations you went to while you was there?
Those were the main agriculture focused ones that we went to. But like I said, we got to travel to. We stayed in Buenos Aires, so we stayed in the city. So we got to kind of wander around and see that a little bit. And then we actually went to Porto Iguazu, so we went to Iguazu Falls. And we actually got to take a boat ride up like through the rapids, and they take you under the waterfall. They call it the Big Shower because you get pelted. So I had my poncho on and I was hunkered down, but it was actually pretty cool. We got to go on the boat and under the falls. So,
so it was worth it.
oh, I will go. I think I will go back. We landed back in Atlanta, and I was like, it's crazy to me that this exists, and I wake up to Kearney Street every day in Manhattan. But no, I think I will 100% go back. And it was especially getting to see, Cattlemen, for example, that was probably my favorite stop, just the way that they talked about their operation and how we got to see it. But it was so cool to see that there's so many things that we are doing here that I don't think we understand are as universal or as global as they are. And it was cool to see just how much they impact us and how much we impact them. So I think I will go back.
What about like on the ranches? Did you get to see like the working facilities? They have hydraulic chutes.
They do.
Stuff like
So
that?
we actually, the first one we went to, they didn't. It was all wood. It was all wood. So it was cool to see that one. And then Cattlemen, the one that we went to, they actually had a full hydraulic chute. They got a seat up there. They got a chair for their operators. So it was pretty high tech. But it was cool to see. And they actually have some of their auctions out at their location. So we got to see their little spot where they set their auction tent up, and got to see that a little bit. So the facilities definitely varied between operations, and it sounded like that was kind of the same across Argentina, depending on, what you were doing and how you were set up. But
well, we've got that here too.
Yeah, I was going to say that was something that was just the same as around here.
So you, I heard you mention livestock show at one part. Is it as big in Argentina as it is in
it didn't sound like it was. It didn't sound like it was as much of a thing down there. But we had talked to it because they were, talking about their bulls and everything, and that was something that we were like, "There's, that's becoming more and more popular." And they actually said that they, with them, doing as much marketing as they are, showing was something that they were kind of getting into a little bit. So I don't think from what I gathered, I don't think it was as popular down there, but there are some, I think, especially the ones that are, selling across countries and whatnot that are getting into that.
So could we make an assumption that the cattle in Argentina look fairly universal, whether it's in the show ring or in the pasture?
Yeah,
which may not be the case here.
I do think that was it was very cool to see that their cattle out in pasture were very, very productive across their females, their bulls, everything. Very, very productive animals. And that was something that was really cool to see. I was someone who, growing up, I had the opportunity to show a lot of breeding females, and that was something that I found important, that she was a cow first. I wasn't just using her for show. After that was over, she needed to go and be productive. So I think that's definitely more of where their show side of things is. It's not necessarily what we would maybe think first when we think of a show animal. I think theirs are more kind of focused on the productive.
Yeah, I think we've kind of got the cart before the horse sometimes when we're wondering how much hair they got versus what they're going to be at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Well, so is this the study abroad? Is this just exclusive to a certain class and certain age at K-State, or is this something that students can participate their whole time up?
Yeah. So it's actually it's not even just College of Ag. It's actually across Kansas State University as a whole. Goes across all different colleges. But College of Ag specifically was obviously my experience. And so they actually trade off between departments and offer different study abroad opportunities to different departments. So me being animal science, they took 18 of us. We had all animal science. We had one that was food science and one that was ag econ that came with us. And then they actually already have trips planned to Cambodia coming up. They're actually doing a 3-week trip to Cambodia over Christmas break. So, but it goes across all departments. So we've had AgCom went to Ireland not too long ago. And that's one of those things that you get involved with it. You have to apply. So sometimes I don't know how much they would take repeats. It kind of depends. But if you apply and you get involved, you have the opportunity to do so.
Awesome. I forgot to ask, did you get to see any like slaughter facilities while you was there?
We didn't. No, we didn't.
Okay.
That wasn't something that we had the opportunity.
Okay. Well, Barber County Cattlemen's helped a little bit with the trip.
A lot, yeah.
So let me ask you this. You've grown up around the association. How important has that association been for you growing up, going to college, let alone studying abroad?
Yeah. I think it's hard to put into words just how much they truly have done for me, but they have been, when I think about all of these different experiences and whatnot that I've had, Barber County Cattlemen's has been a pillar in a lot of those. Growing up judging, they were always supporting us. That was something that they always, made sure that we were able to go and do. And then whenever we came back, they wanted to hear about it and they wanted to know how we did. Same thing. That didn't end when I graduated high school. That didn't end when I was no longer a 4-H member in this county. I have seen tremendous support from so many people, even outside of Cattlemen's, across the county as a whole. But the association itself was a huge part of this study abroad experience. And I'm just really thankful that they not only believe in myself, but in others in this county, and that they want to see us succeed in this industry.
Yeah, I tried to share with a lot of people that our judging teams, the success of those is directly from the Barber County Cattlemen's Association, because people don't realize when we say they support us, it's 100%. If a kid had to pay for a meal or anything, it was because they chose to do that. The Cattlemen's took care of it all. And what I've tried to share is, until you're involved with trying to lead a team or coach a team, you don't realize how much that frees you up to do what you need to do to set the kids up for success.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure Tom would say the same thing on the meat side as I would on the crops, that if we're out having to do fundraisers to pay for trips and supplies and stuff, that's less time that you have with the young person, because it's really, you're just teaching them about life.
Yeah.
It's a whole lot more than a banner and a picture on Facebook.
I had a lot of lessons learned in those road trips. Probably learned more outside of the practices than in the contest.
Oh, well, as mentioned before we hit record, you judged with Taylor towards the end, and this weekend was his wedding, and we used to have a joke that, Callan Smith is a senior in high school now. And when he was a young kid, every time we'd stop at Brahms, he'd be like, man, Taylor, he loses his
phone charger
every judging trip.
That was something I didn't catch on to for a while either, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, those are great times. And I'm glad that you've had a positive experience with that growing up.
Well, and it carried on too. There were so many people that it didn't really cross my mind until I got to college, but people that I had seen in the results room of Umberger at every state contest, or people that I had stood next to that I have pictures with that now I have class with, or things like that. So it was really cool to see there were so many connections just from judging that carried on at K-State.
That's awesome. Now, what's your major?
Animal science and industry. And then I have a focus in production management and a minor in ag sales. And
graduating in May.
Very soon.
Yeah. What would your dream job look like?
Oh gosh, that's a tough question. My problem is I think I have like where I want to be in 10 years, but it's the matter of me figuring out the between now and then part. It's hard to pinpoint. Growing up, I think I always had this idea that I wanted to go on. I wanted to be an extension. I wanted to be an extension agent. That was something I'd always kind of looked at. I've had the opportunity to work in the state office up in Manhattan, and that's been really cool to continue that. That's obviously something I'm still kind of considering, but my goal, I don't know that it's necessarily a specific, I'm not going to say a specific cookie cutter job, but I want to be a storyteller for the industry. And that's something that I have become really passionate about, because I think it's really important for us, especially whether we like to say it or not, we are in a delicate industry, because there's so many things that we do not have control over. We work every single day with things that we do not have control over. And part of that is, the markets. We don't have control over that. It's the consumer ideas. We don't have control over that. And I think for me, it's, if we don't tell our story, somebody else will. So I want to continue to work with producers. I want to continue to work and to kind of reestablish that trust between producers and consumers. Working with youth has always been something I'm really passionate about. So if there's a way for me to stay involved with that, I would absolutely love to do so. Obviously, in the future, I would like to build my own herd, and Tom Carr would love to hear it. But one day, I hope to sell my own beef. I think it's really cool to see people that do that and tell the story of where food comes from. And that's something, social media is huge, and we have that at our fingertips to be able to tell our stories and to kind of reestablish that with consumers. So, not sure that completely answered your question,
No,
but
good.
Yeah, that's the goal. So,
I want to touch on, selling your own beef, because there's a misconception, and the agriculture industry does a good job of fighting itself. I don't get that. We're all in it for the same goal, and that's to help people, but yet we want to take shots at each other. And I heard somebody one time, a fairly prominent voice in Kansas, talking about there is zero difference, and they put it on social media about, the beef that you're going to get from Walmart versus, directly from the producer. And I'm like, there's a lot of difference, especially when it comes down to the ground beef. That's coming from that individual animal, and that is not happening outside of that.
Yeah.
And for them to say that, I'm like, that's just bogus information.
Yeah.
And
I think one thing that I have has kind of shifted my perspective a little bit since I've been at K-State. I've had the opportunity to go to things like KLA, go to things like NCBA, and see all of these different people from so many different sectors of the industry come together. And that was something that kind of shifted my perspective of, for me personally, I struggled a long time with, I knew I wanted to pursue agriculture, but I didn't know where I fit into the industry. And so I tried to put myself in a box, and if I was going to be involved, it had to look like this. And that's absolutely not the case. And I think one thing that we as an industry kind of struggle to remember is that we don't all have to be doing the same things to reach the same goal, but we have to support each other to do that. My place in the industry is not going to look the same as your place in the industry, and that's fine. And truthfully, I think that's exactly the way God intended it. He gave each one of us different skills. He gave each one of us different passions. And there's a reason for that, because what I'm going to go out and do is not going to be the same as what you're going to do. And that's fine. And I think sometimes we struggle to remember that we don't all have to be doing the same things. And for this all to work, I don't have to do everything. I just need to do my part. And I think if we kind of got back to that a little bit of, you do your part, I'll do my part, and we'll get there eventually, I think that we would have a lot of success as an industry. And I think there's parts of that that are working and that are good. It's not all around. But I think there's parts of it, especially with things that maybe are a little bit controversial, that we lose sight of what our end goal is. And we try to fight it so much that we just end up backtracking, or we end up confusing consumers more. And then we have to circle back.
Yeah, we do a great job of causing fear in the consumers ourselves.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I go back to it never hurt just to be polite and nice to somebody, just because they don't agree, just because they're doing something different than what you did. Whoopity do.
Yeah.
We used to use the analogy, there's more than one way to skin a cat. Well, there is.
And I think though there's a lot of people that they struggle with that, though. If it's not their way, it's not the correct way.
There's the race to be right.
Yes. And I think we're all, guilty of it at some point. I know I'm obviously still very young in my career in the industry, but even in high school, anyone who knew me knew in my brain, I had to have control. And if I had control, that meant that I could control the outcome. Absolutely not the case. Yeah. Had a lot of God laughs moment that have completely shifted that perspective a lot. But I actually live every day. My high school basketball coach, my senior year, she told me 3 words. that absolutely changed my life and changed my perspective. And that was control your controllables. I don't have
Yeah.
control. That's huge I use that in my life, but in our industry for sure, we don't have control over the markets. We don't have control over the government. We don't have control over what every single consumer thinks, but we have control over what we do about it. And that's something that when I set out in this industry on my professional career that I really want to take with me.
On a daily basis, I'm reminded of something similar to what you just said, and that is somebody shared with me, you need to know when to pick your battles. And most of the time it's never.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
if you don't agree with something, there's a beautiful thing called silence. Let the people say what they want to say. You can listen to it. There's nothing wrong with hearing their perspective, but it's up to you to decide if you want to engage and cause more hard feelings or more heated discussion. And it's a beautiful thing if you can just realize I'm going to pick and choose my battles, and today's not going to be one.
I think social media that has been a huge part of that, especially now too, because there's people, they get online and they think that if they engage in this argument online, it's going to solve the world's problems. And that's not the case. I think it's important to, you say your piece, you advocate for what you believe in, but that doesn't mean that you're going to change everyone's mind. And that's fine. As long as you're saying your piece, you're advocating for what you think, leave it at that.
I got to remember you're young. You're wise beyond your years, but I'm going to share a story. At my house, I have a Time magazine. Magazines are not very popular anymore. Back in the day, print media was huge.
Yeah.
And this is a Time magazine from back in the 40s. And on occasion, I have it because of the individual that's on the front cover. It meant a lot to me, and it's autographed, and it stays in a plastic bag. Every now and again, I take it out, and I thumb through it and read it. As weird as that sounds, what you need to know is everything that people argue about on social media today in 2026, they were doing that in print media in the 40s. Politics, life in general, everything. And it's a good reminder. And, I'll tell you, there's a little book out there that most of the time people would open it up on today, which is Sunday. If they ever read that, they'd realize those discussions have been going on for thousands of years. Well, about the time Eve ate the apple, after that, we've had heated debates.
Yeah. There's a lot of times, I'm that same way, but my faith is what's pulled me back in. There's a lot of times I'm thinking something crazy. I open it up and I'm like, yeah, gosh, you really just know how to put me in my place, huh? But I think that's part of it.
Yeah. So before we wrap this up, I want to ask you, you were a lifetime member. As long as you could be a member of 4-H, you were. What kind of impact did 4-H have on you through school, now into college, and looking forward?
Yeah, I always joke I was born into it, but that's pretty much
Kinda
the case.
was.
Yeah. No, I catch myself when someone asks me, why are you the way that you are? Every time I give a presentation or, whatever I do, I always catch myself going back to, I was a 12-year member of the Sunflower 4-H Club, which is such a simple thing, but there were so many things wrapped into those 12 years that truly have turned me into the person I am now. And it wasn't just the projects or, the record book, as much as I hate to admit that was really good for me. Don't tell my father, but it was the people. It was this county. It was across the state, building those relationships through 4-H. There are so many things that I was pushed to do outside of my comfort zone. So many lessons in terms of responsibility and accountability and just getting up and putting your head down and going to work and doing what you need to do. And I mean, outside of that, even, it's what introduced me to my passions. I grew up on a cow-calf operation. I grew up surrounded by it every single day. I saw my dad live it out every single day, my family. But when I had the opportunity to do it for myself is when that really switched. And when I decided this is something I want to pursue for the rest of my life. And so I relay everything really, truly back to what I started in 4-H. And that was, learning how to be comfortable being uncomfortable, learning how to public speak, learning how to have relationships with people, that you do get along with and that you don't get along with. But no, truthfully, I relay all of that back to the projects that I did in 4-H, the people that I met. And I think that it's carried me through high school. It forced me to be involved in high school in the best way. It carried me through college the same exact way. And I really do think that there are so many parts of that and what it instilled in me that I will carry with me through my professional career.
Yeah, and throw this in there is you did a whole lot more in 4-H than show livestock. And I think people forget that you can find your niche in 4-H regardless of the project. And one of the neatest things I've ever heard, we won't mention their name, but they were in 4-H around the time you was. They said, because of the foods project, I didn't have to live on grilled cheese and ramen noodles in college. And I went, people don't think about that. There's a lot of college kids that are hungry because they don't know how to prepare a meal, and 4-H taught them how to.
And I remember I had one little realization moment. I was in class up in K-State, and we had this part of our class where we had to buy cattle with our group. And we're sitting there, we had to write a check, we had to do it all. And I'm sitting in a group of 6 college kids who are 20 years old, living on their own. It comes time to write the check. And I was the only one in that group of 6 that knew how to write a check. And I said, guys, what are we doing here? Like, what is happening? But I thought about it and I said, the reason I know how to do that is because I held a treasurer position in 4-H when I was 10 years old.
Yep. And
so there's so many little things like that I don't think you think about. Same with record books. Learning how to write those stories. It's what forced me to learn how to put a paragraph together. Yep. But there was so many things. Learning how to do the math.
Let's be clear. That was before ChatGPT. You
Exactly.
actually had to
I had to write it myself. Yeah. Learning how to figure for feed and all of these different things I was sitting in class learning how to, do feed calculations. I'm like, oh, heck yeah, I know how to do this. But there are so many little things like that it's not you bake a cake, you walk in on the end of a halter. It's not just that. That's part of it. But there were so many behind the scenes and little lessons that I think build you up that have these moments of realization that you're like, oh, 4-H taught me that. Yeah. 4-H did this for me.
That's great. Well, thank you very much for taking time. I know you've had a busy weekend and you've got to get back to school. Thank you for taking time today for the visit, and appreciate the example you've been setting. I tell you this, when I see you, I'm always glad my girls had a positive example. And I'll also show your dad that picture of when you were slightly aggravated at their first day camp, and he said she deserves everything she's getting from them too.
It's probably true.
But thank you again, and best of luck. I know graduation's coming up pretty quick. Hopefully we find you somewhere close to this county, because we're always looking for volunteers. and your family does a good job of that. We just need to keep more of them coming back.
Yeah.
All right. Well, hey, have a safe trip back to school, and thanks again.
Yeah. Thanks so much for having me.